So, back when I lived in Seattle, I used to make a habit of stopping by the Starbucks on the corner of 4th and Seneca every day on my way to rehearsal. At the time, I was in a summer production of Richard III, and the small studio where we rehearsed was about a 15-minute walk from my apartment. Our director was a person named Sal. Sal worked full-time as a manager at a Staples, and they insisted on having rehearsal before their shift started instead of after. And this could have been really awful, but the cast was great, and Sal was an excellent director, and it meant that I could stop by the Starbucks at 4th and Seneca every weekday at about 5:30 a.m., when Addie was working. Addie was the first friend I made in Seattle. We met, and this is humiliating, at an improv class hosted briefly by the Seattle rep.
10 shopping bags more. That's it.
10 shopping bags more.
Read the rest. We have.
You're paying
You know
for my
what?
bag.
I realize that shitting on improv is sort of the hip theater thing to do, but improv is really hard, so I shit in self-defense. Anyway, after about 2 weeks of the class, which reached this weird competitive intensity, both of us decided that we would just cut our $125 losses and stop attending. We hadn't exchanged contact information or anything, as we didn't really know each other, but after class that day we got talking, and she said she worked at Starbucks, and I asked if I could stop by and say hello to her sometime, and she said I should 100% do that. That's what she said, you should 100% do that. So I took the bus home, and I got out a stop earlier than usual, and I enjoyed the warm evening air as I walked back to my apartment. That was a good night. I did stop by to say hello. The first time I went to 4th and Seneca, she wasn't there, and I probably would have forgotten all about it had it not been for this production of Richard III. The first day of rehearsal, I stumbled into the first Starbucks I saw. I was desperate for caffeine, and I stood there in my sweatpants and Tom Petty t-shirt, mumbling out my order, and I heard someone say my name. I looked up and I saw Addie with a green apron and irrational perk, smiling in confusion. I choked out a greeting and said that I didn't realize she worked this early. She said she could say the same about me. I left, still mostly unconscious, but I made a note to be more present the next morning.
I fell in love and I needed a roadmap to find out where you live, so excited. Sleepwalking, 'cause I'm sleepwalking.
The months wore on, and rehearsal stopped and started due to some scheduling conflicts. Eventually, the timing worked out perfectly so that I could stop by the Starbucks once on my way to rehearsal and a second time on my way back, which also happened to be when Addie got off work, except on Tuesdays when she worked for an extra hour. Saying that out loud, I don't know if that makes sense. Basically, we would both be done at the same time, and it was still early enough in the day that we could take a few minutes, sitting at the table next to the window, and shoot the shit as the bustle of the city gradually trickled its way into the suburbs. I typically complained about rehearsal, and she complained about her hyper-conservative mom, and we developed this really intricate inside joke where we would try to come up with fanciful biographies for the customers that came through the doors. It was nice.
Your heart is a drum.
Addie always ordered the same thing when she got off work. A tall hot chocolate with cinnamon flavor, extra pump of mocha, with cinnamon sprinkled on top. She made me try it one time, and after that it became all I ordered. Tall hot chocolate, cinnamon flavor, extra pump of mocha, cinnamon sprinkled on top. I fell in love with the drink. I also think I fell in love with Addie. In July, with about a week left until opening night, I stayed behind after a Tuesday rehearsal, hoping to talk with Sal. Their boyfriend occasionally stopped by rehearsals, and they seemed really cheerful and happy together. I hadn't been in love with someone for almost 4 years at this point, and I think I was hoping to just talk about it with someone. Maybe get some pointers. Sal told me the advice they could give was cliché, but true. Be honest. Trust my feelings. And that if she already had a boyfriend, stay the hell away. They put their hand on my shoulder before we left. You're a great performer and a good guy, my dude, they said. You deserve to be happy. I hope this is that for you. Opening night came and went. We had a string of truly kick-ass performances, mostly in small venues throughout the Seattle area. We made it out to perform in a couple of the adjacent cities, Bellevue, Mercer Island, one in Renton. I loved that show. Addie came the night before closing, and I really gave it everything and a half that night.
Why so? Now I've done a good day's work. You peers continue this united league. I expect every day an embassage from my Redeemer to redeem me hence, and more in peace my soul shall part to heaven, since I have made my friends at peace on earth.
I waited until after the show had completely run its course to talk to Addie. And I'll be honest, I don't want to look that memory in the eye just yet. So, at risk of sacrificing the flow of the narrative, I'll just tell you that she didn't feel the same way that I did. That we didn't talk for 3 months afterwards, and then I moved away to take a job teaching theater to middle schoolers in Waukegan, Illinois, in a blur of emotions and Kerouacian despair. Waukegan has a couple Starbucks, and I occasionally stopped by the one on Grand and Green Bay, typically with this strange degree of reserved sadness. You should never fall in love with someone who works at a chain restaurant. It'll ruin that restaurant for you. Does Starbucks count as a chain restaurant? Sure, we'll say it does. They have sandwiches and stuff, right? Every time that I went to the Starbucks in Waukegan, I would order the same sad, comforting, familiar thing. Tall hot chocolate, cinnamon flavor, extra pump of mocha, cinnamon sprinkled on top. I'm writing this now because I was in Seattle last week to help Sal pack up. They got a new job in Albuquerque, and after they broke up with their boyfriend, they were lacking most of their support system, and I wanted to be a good friend, and I was looking for an excuse to take some time off anyway, so I drove there, arrived at their apartment late at night, and after crashing for basically a full day, I helped them pack up 5 years' worth of books, trinkets, and a truly insane amount of weighted blankets. We broke for lunch, and we walked past the Starbucks on 4th and Seneca. Addie hadn't worked there for a couple years at that point, but I was still fairly resistant to Sal's suggestion that we stop and get coffee. I stalled for a second, pretending to admire that disproportionately stylish dentist's office sign neighboring the store, but in the end we went in. I stared for a long time at the ambient photographs on the walls, taking in the warm scents of various beans and syrups. That moment hurt. A lot. Lots of moments still hurt a lot. And that's when I realized with a start that Sal had already ordered and was waiting on me, and I got a little stressed out. So I went up to the counter, and I thought about Richard III, and I thought about my new apartment in Waukegan, and I thought about how uncertain everything still felt. I ordered 1 black coffee, and we left.